So welcome back. One of my favorite authors is Steven Pressfield. Even if you don't know him, you know his work. He wrote a book called The War of Art, and he also wrote the book The Legend of Bagger Vance that was turned into a movie. He wrote one of my all-time favorite books called To Do the Work. The guy is a real pro as a thinker and as a writer. He's one of the smoothest, most efficient, to-the-point writers that I've ever read, and I really, really like him. And as such, he's had to work very hard to get that way, really, really hard. He tells stories about how he works in order to be a good writer. And so he's got a lot to say about turning pro in another one of his books called Turning Pro. If you're a leader or a manager or a supervisor and you're here with me in this Hilt Academy video, or maybe you're a leveraged influencer, you're likely very interested in becoming better and better at your job and becoming what others would regard, what you and yourself regard simply as a professional person or a pro. A pro is somebody who has developed consistent, disciplined professional habits, meaning that they approach their work with a dedicated and focused mindset, consistently showing up to face challenges and then to overcome resistance, a concept that Pressfield writes beautifully about. And unlike an amateur, who might be more inconsistent or easily swayed by distractions, internal distractions like their own emotions or their own thirst or hunger, as well as external distractions like a phone or someone calling or something interesting in the news. A pro is highly focused, and they use disciplines and habits to stay focused. Their habits are wildly different from those who are amateurs. The key distinction, therefore, between an amateur and a pro lies in their habits. A pro has ingrained and deliberate habits that support their work ethic and their creativity and even their productivity and their quality. Amateurs don't. Amateurs can be excellent accidentally once, but a pro is excellent intentionally over and over and over. Pros have disciplines that enable them to focus and habits that enable them to focus. They have routines that they put in place because they know that focus is the core of any professional behavior. Pros use their calendar to make decisions, and they don't use their emotions to make decisions. In fact, their emotions lead them if they are an amateur, and they follow or they're an aftermath if they're a pro. Pros tend to divide their work up into deep work and shallow work. This is a Cal Newport concept, and I really like it, and I've noticed that many pros think this way, even if they don't know anything about the concept. Deep work being, I need to set aside highly focused time and dive into the work in an undistracted and undistractable way. And shallow work is the kind of work that, like a bunch of tasks, can be done. And I can go from one task to another in a matter of moments. And I can be distracted and come back to them. And a pro knows how to divide their work into the two categories. And the deep work is the work that pays off. They're very result-oriented. They're wildly curious, and they put habits in place to track their results and to create their own curiosity. A pro is also somebody who has put all those habits in place that enable them to get into what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called flow, a state of flow. That is where they are in that deep work and time is suspended and they're able to continue to concentrate on their work. And they so dive into that deep work that their quality goes way up, their sense of pain and perspective goes away. It's a fascinating place to be. It's often applied to people in performing arts or in athletics. So the pro knows that the mundane physical act of starting to work sets in motion this mysterious process that eventually produces inspiration. That's something that Pressfield drives home in his work, in several other places. The pro therefore understands this concept that I've borrowed from physics called activation energy. The pro understands that it takes energy to get started and it doesn't take nearly as much energy to keep going. And that the result of starting, which might take Herculean effort to start at something, to bat away frustration and distractions and irritations and get your mind to focus. The pro knows that that takes quite a bit of energy to do that, but it doesn't take very long to do that. And then that energy that it requires to do the actual quality work decreases as long as they're not distracted and pulled back out of the work. That's called activation energy. Your refrigerator at home, for example, you could track the amount of energy it uses when it's sitting there doing nothing, the light's not on, the fans are not moving, it's just sitting there passively. And then because of a change in temperature and humidity, the compressor turns on and boom, it'll draw quite a bit of power for just a moment. And then as it runs and then cools everything off, it draws less and less and less power. That spike in energy is called activation energy. The pro creates disciplines and habits to start and to create and to maintain momentum. The pro knows that momentum is not magic. It isn't accidental, it's deliberate. Pros are also highly committed to the craft of their work. They're committed to their chosen field. It's a vocation. Even when they're facing difficulty, they're actively seeking to improve the craft of their work. They know that the depth of their commitment is more important than the depth of their talent. It's more important than their beauty or their skills. It's more important than luck because it's the depth of their commitment that creates grit. And grit is what creates endurance. So, dear friend, leader, manager, supervisor, how committed are you? How much adversity are you willing to endure to pursue your commitment? Can you stand going for periods of time without any money while you work at this thing? Are you willing to work through pain? Emotional pain, physical pain, maybe even spiritual pain? Can you weather self-doubt and fear and despair and rejection? Are you committed to your craft? Pros also overcome resistance, and resistance is protean. It shows up in many times and in many places and actively pushes back on you as you work toward that outcome. You as a pro recognize it for what it is. It's not a bad hair day. It's not that you didn't sleep well. It is this force as though it's set against you to keep you from accomplishing the really good thing that's been put in your heart. And that force can be your inner doubts and fears, but it could also be external words and distractions. And it just shows up and shows up and shows up. And the closer you get to starting, the more intense the resistance. And then it goes away for a while, and then the closer you get to finishing, the more intense the resistance. All pros know this, and they overcome it. Pros, in last thought, are also quite balanced when you look at their work. They're very intensely committed, but there are three areas of their professionalism that show up. They're very good at the technical or the craft part of their job. They're also very good at being teachable, trainable, open, and humble in that regard. And they're also very good at working with and through other people. That's what we call the T3 model. Imagine a circle and imagine it divided into thirds. And that top third from like noon till 1/3 of the way around the clock there is the technical part of their job. And often people think that a pro is just good technically. But if you are a pro and you're only good technically, you're no pro. You're only good at 1/3 of your job because you also have to be teachable or trainable. You have to have this voracious curiosity to figure out how to be better and to do better. That's the second T, trainable. And the third T is team, because I'm not in this by myself. Even the most lonely pro is not alone. They have to be able to have people around them who are a part of their team. They have to be able to be good at doing that work as well. So, are you a pro? Are you becoming one? Are you a leader, or a manager, or a supervisor, or an influencer? And are you in a place where we need you to succeed and we need you to become a pro? You know, for many of us, the quality of our work and our lives, perhaps even our relationships, depends upon you becoming a pro. Because without your leadership and without your quality work, without your deep professionalism and all that I just described, we don't get to benefit from your product and from your mission and from that vocation that is what makes you you. So, leadership is hard. Don't make it harder than it needs to be by thinking that you can amateur your way through it. If it matters, we need you to be a pro. Here's to you.